Let's say my current stack, the stack I'm working with now, is basically React, TypeScript, Node, Express.js, and AWS Fargate. That's basically it. The only problem is, I'm so much object-oriented that functional programming took a while to grow on me, basically. So, that was the introduction. So, what do you need to do? Well, there's 4 things I think you should do. First of all, we should start delivering smaller features. So instead of building bigger ones, or even MVPs, or whole projects, or whole products, we should start delivering feature by feature by feature by feature. And you make it as small as possible. Basically, to end up in a situation where you only solve a single problem every day with a small team. Right, Wouter? I just see you sitting there. So the next thing is, we're going to do this in even shorter cycles. You're all in Agile project, or Scrum projects, right? Who's in a Scrum project? Oh God, stop. Move on, I'll show you why. That's the second thing. The third thing is, we're going to do this in even smaller teams. If you think that the typical Scrum team of 7 plus or minus 2 or 6 plus or minus 3 is small, it's going to be smaller. And I'm also going to explain to you why. The one thing I'm not going to explain to you is that we're going to do this in even smaller components. Basically, we're all going to move to microservices architectures, serverless architectures, and very small applications. That's it, basically. But that part I'm not going to get to. Right? So the first thing is, we're going to deliver smaller features. And there's one model that I really would like to use to illustrate this, and it's called the Kinetic framework. Have you heard of it? Nope, no. Good time to explain, right? So basically, this is written by a guy called Dave Snowden when he worked for IBM. And it's a model that sort of divides the world into 4 different contexts, or actually 5. The red thing in the middle is also a context, but you don't want to be there. It's like hell, basically. So that's Java, right? And no, just kidding. So you start with the obvious zone, right? The obvious zone is where if you have a problem, there is a simple best practice. And the only thing you need to do is do that best practice. Like for instance, if the dishes are on my sink at home, I put them in the dishwasher. I can ask my kids, but they will have forgotten within 30 seconds. So the best solution is I do it myself. Every day. That's basically it. There is a single problem, a single best practice, just do it. This is easy. Even managers can manage this, right? And then, that's the simple thing, right? And then there's the second thing, which is called the complicated zone. Now in the complicated zone, to a problem, there is probably a list of good solutions, right? That means you have to do some analysis and figure out which one works for you best. You pick one, like you do identity access management. You can do lots of stuff, right? You can build everything yourself, which is pretty hard, basically. You can use one of the well-known providers, a local provider, or whatever solution comes to mind, right? There's a number of good solutions. So you do the analysis, you figure it out, you build it, you test it, and you go on. That's it, right? That is still manageable. But the problem is, in this industry, we are usually not in these 2 zones. We are usually either in the complex or in the chaotic zones. In the complex zone, you don't know exactly what practices there are for the problems you have, right? The only thing you know is, I have a dotted horizon where I want to go as a company, as a team, as an organization, as a product, whatever, right? That's where I want to be in like 2 to 3 years' time. And the only thing I can do is take small steps to get there. From doing that, we learn all sorts of stuff. There's all sorts of practices coming out of that. These are called emerging practices. Could be worse. You could be in the chaotic zone. And in the chaotic zone, you don't even have a dotted horizon. And the only thing you can do then is take a step, try something new, as we do all the time, and then see what works. And then move on, and hopefully in the end, you will find your dotted horizon. Now, if you are in a market like QB is, or in the fintech market, or in any other market that evolves so quickly, you are on the left side of this diagram. Being on the left side of this diagram basically means you cannot manage it as a project, right? So this industry, which is largely on the left side of this diagram, is not meant for the traditional project metaphor. So stop doing that. Now, basically, or tomorrow, that's also good. So to quickly summarize, this is like, that's I get, right? This is, wait, that's the one. This is basically, we'll see what happens. And this is even worse. So, the interesting thing is, so this is Dave Snowden. Dave Snowden wrote this thing. He says, well, in the chaotic context, which most of us are in, searching for right answers would be pointless. The relationships between cause and effect are impossible to determine. He also says that the chaotic context is basically the best situation to innovate. So if you are in a complex or a chaotic zone, innovation is best. That means stuff like this, you know what this is, right? This is the waterfall. This is basically the original picture from a white paper by a guy called Winston Royce. He doesn't mention the word waterfall. The only reason it's a waterfall is because when he wrote this in 1970, the text editor didn't allow him to put 7 boxes in a row. True story. So anyway, this should go, right? We shouldn't be doing this. Also, if you have a detailed planning in your organization, in your team, get rid of it. This doesn't really work in where we are. Basically, the message should be, stop doing projects. Because it doesn't work in a chaotic and complex situation, where most of us are in, right? What you should do is you should favor delivering in small pieces. And you all know that, right? If you would be saying, like, oh, here's my version 1, and let's say every 3 months, I release a big chunk of work. Releasing a big chunk of work takes lots of work. They take lots of time, lots of effort, lots of testing effort for that matter, right? So it's much harder to move big pieces out and to move on to the next situation than to do it in very small pieces. So this is slowing you down. So the best thing to do is make all your pieces as small as possible and release every time you can, right? Not every 2 weeks. Right? That is arbitrary. Every 2 weeks does not make sense. You release as fast as you can, as often as you can, and as small as you can. That's the only way that you can move faster and faster and faster. Right? The smaller your individual releases are, that's why microservices and serverless architectures are so nice, because you can release in really, really small chunks. And that is where you should go to. Right. And by the way, the message should be, if you do this, you can't stop doing projects. Now the second part. So what is that? Well, we have to talk about cycles, right? I've been in this industry quite a long time, right? I started programming 38 years ago. I still write code every day, I love it. And when I grew up, it was basically, we did waterfall. Waterfall has a single cycle of delivery, right? You invent something, you do the analysis, you do the design, you write the code, you do the test, and then you deliver. Could take 2 years, could take forever, could take 5 years, could take 10 years. I've actually seen that, but that was what it was. And then came basically the next sort of generation of software development methodologies. Rational Unified Process was one of them. They shortened the cycles already. They went back to 4 to 6 months and then took iterations on that. And then we moved to stuff like DSDM. It went to 4 to 6 weeks maybe. And then we got things like Scrum, right? Now the problem with Scrum is, so it has basically a 2 to 4 week cycle. Some people do 1 week, some people do 3 weeks. But the problem is, people think that it ends there, right? We have sprints, and sprints are mandatory, right? Sprints will get in your way once you want to move faster, right? So we can move on from that. You could say, well, we're going to deliver once every day. Or even further, we're going to deliver every time we have something to deliver. And that is where you need to go, right? So that means, how long is a sprint? It doesn't really matter, because in the end, sprints will fail you, because sprints are just like mini projects that you estimate the work and you get an ideal line, and by the end of your sprint, well, the only thing you can see here is you have some work left. These are actual burn down charts from actual projects. This is the same project. After 6 months, because they have month-long sprints, they failed miserably, and the project manager said, you're a bunch of idiots, because you don't know how to estimate your work. Well, to tell you the truth, we don't, right? We don't know how to estimate at this low level. You shouldn't, basically. So basically, my idea is, stop doing this. Remove sprints from what you're doing, because they don't add value anymore, because we're going too fast. That was good in 2001. It was good in 2005. It is not anymore in 2020. And the Agile Manifesto, if you look at it, it doesn't also say deliver in 2 weeks. It says deliver continuously. And that is where you need to go. So you can't just stop doing sprints, right? Sprints do not add the value you need. You need to deliver small and continuously. You need to get into a flow that basically says all my work items move from left to right, and the shorter they can move from left to right, the shorter the time I need, the faster I go, the better I am at what I do, the more automated I am at what I do. By the way, this is not an advertisement for Jira. I don't like Jira. So the thing you need to do is you need to automate everything, right? You need to automate all the tests. The only thing you're still left doing is invent what you're going to do, write the code, write the test, pull it through the pipeline, and out it goes. And it should go into production almost immediately, or at least into your acceptance environment. That also means you have to test from day one. And testing does not mean get a person in with a spreadsheet who clicks the buttons and then says, I need to fill in this, and I click the button, see what happens, and fill it. And then when the spreadsheet is fully filled in, they're done, right? That takes too long. You need to automate that too. So you need also to automate all of your UI and UX tests as well. Everything, basically. And so people say, oh, I cannot do that. Yes, you can. Right? You just have to learn. It takes discipline. Just like when we first did unit testing, right? Nobody liked unit testing back then, and still a lot of people don't. But the effect of doing it right is tremendously. It allows me to basically, I'm going to skip this one for a bit, it allows me to work with my code without debugging. We have our unit test written to a large extensive code coverage. We almost never open up the debugger anymore because we don't need to, basically. We just look at the test and go on. And that's a luxury, and I love that luxury, basically. So if you do that, and if you automate everything, you can stop doing projects, right? I think you got the message by now, right? So what can you stop? You don't sound too enthusiastic. Go back to your project, right? Fail. It's like, I don't care, basically. No, I do care. So, and the next thing is, we're going to do this with smaller teams. So what about smaller teams? What's the problem? Now the problem is that when Agile sort of came out, so we started doing Agile-like methodologies or approaches in the mid-90s, and then in 2001, the official Agile Manifesto came out, and we all started doing this, and then people moved to Scrum, etc., etc., and then all of the big enterprises started doing enterprise Agile things, which, well, we'll talk about that. Well, anyway, so, and the problem is, if you look at the Agile Manifesto, it is still a very important document. I wish there was like a Nobel Prize for manifestos or whatever. They should have gotten it, by the way, because it changed the industry big time. That single document, right, with these 4 values and these 12 or 13 principles in it, it's really good. But it doesn't actually solve the things we suffer from today. Like, for instance, this one. You're all here, right? That means nobody's doing work anyway now because you're all here. So there's essentially a low availability of resources. This is management terminology, right? They usually mean people, but I always ask them, right? So they said, yeah, we need some more resources. So what do you mean? More tables, more computers? What? And they say, no, oh, developers. Oh, you mean people, right? Yes. And there's a low availability. That means we cannot fill in all the positions we need to go really, really fast. That means we have to find different things to make sure that we're going still fast. We have to become really a jack of all trades, basically, right? It's not enough that you know Vue or React or Angular or HTML, CSS. You have to know more, right? You have to be able to also write a microservice, talk about API design, talk about usability, talk about infrastructure or whatever, right? We all have our sweet spot, and that's good. But next to that sweet spot, we should develop in a broader sense. Because if you start working with smaller teams, as not everybody's always available, that means you have to do more things. So you have to grow as a developer, as a QA, as a UX, UI specialist, etc., etc. And we all have to do that, right? Also, we still try to work from 9 to 5. I have no idea why we do this. In the Netherlands, this is wait, go back, yes. This is a picture I took from my car on the A2, driving from Utrecht, where I live, to Amsterdam, where I work. The road is full. The other side of the road is also full. They're going from Amsterdam to Utrecht. And you're in your car and you're thinking, why am I doing this, right? What do most people do when they get to work? They read their email. Reading your email, you can do everywhere, basically. So why not just first read your email and then go to the office, right? If 20% of the people would do that, we could probably solve the whole traffic jam problem in the Netherlands. By the way, not every country has this. I was in Minsk, in Belarus last week. The roads look like this, right? So we should all move there, I guess. The thing is, working 9 to 5 doesn't really cut it in this industry because we have all sorts of other obligations. Like, oh, my kids have to go to the doctor. I want to sleep out. I'm drunk last night, so I want to sleep out. Whatever, right? There could be any good reason to not show up at work at 9, right? Like I'm reading my fucking email or whatever, right? And the problem is, our hats don't work from 9 to 5, right? Software development, UX, UI, QA, whatever we do in this industry, it is all creative work. Now, creative work does not get caught between 9 to 5. This is a nice diagram, right? Managers, you see if my pointer works today. Oh, yes, it does. Well, it's a bit fast. See, managers think we work from 9 to 12, and then again from like 1 to 5, and then we go home. My mind doesn't work like that. My mind works like, I have a problem, it sits in the back of my head the whole day. I'm basically computing code in the back of my head the whole day. That's what I figured out. So I got ideas like at 9 in the evening when I'm on the couch watching telly with my son, or when I'm in the showers, or when I'm in bed. Even when I'm in bed, right? I sometimes wake up and I'm thinking, this is it. And if I don't use that idea at that point in time, the next morning I will have forgotten, right? You get that? Do you have that too? It's terrible, right? I used to have a notebook next to my bed just to write it down. These days I just open up my laptop and then my girlfriend wakes up, what are you doing? Well, I had an idea. Oh, not that, right? So our hands don't work from 9 to 5. So why do this? Why do we get into this mode of 9 to 5? I really don't know, basically. And then the next thing is communication, which is very important if you do Agile project. It is really, really hard, right? We all suffer from that, basically. We are not in, so we're usually slightly introverted in this industry, and it makes communication hard. Now, in Agile, there's lots of meetings. I don't like meetings, basically. I fucking hate them, basically. I mean, you have to be in all of these meetings, and I try to avoid them as much as possible. Every meeting, I think like, should I really be there? Do I add some value to this meeting? Do I have anything to say in this meeting? Is it interesting enough? If not, I'm not going, right? I skip all of these, basically. I just want to write my code, that's it. Now, if you could do that with much smaller groups, the smaller your group is, the better the communication is, right? Communication with 3 people is much easier. Also, if you have a small team of just 3 people, that means you could work somewhere else, right? Avoid the traffic, avoid having to be there at 9. Why not start working at 12 in a restaurant with some nice lunch? And then work until 9 in the evening, or whatever you do, it doesn't matter, right? This is a 24/7 economy. That means all these big meetings, like big refinement sessions at the start of your sprint, with 12 people in a room, no decisions are made after the end of the day. Stop doing that, basically. Don't go there. Open floor plans, it's even worse. Do you like open floor plans? Who of you has noise cancellation headphones? I rest my case. The company I now work for, they even decide to rent noise cancellation headphones, right? Because we cannot concentrate in these full rooms. This doesn't work. It's been proven, by the way. So, yes, your office open floor plan is ruining your productivity. So, stay at home. Work with 3 people somewhere else. And then the next thing we need to talk about is autonomy, right? Autonomy is a big thing. Everybody has to be autonomous. Autonomous teams, self-organizing teams. That's basically, it's an interesting concept. I like it a lot. But it's really hard to teach. I've been trying to teach teams self-organization and autonomy for like 20 years. It's tough, basically. You know why? Because self-organization is for most people way out of their comfort zone. If I tell teams, you are now self-organizing, you know what they ask me? And they ask me, so, what do you want us to do? That's the problem, right? I can show you, I can say, well, you can be autonomous, so I can show you, well, draw the first 2 circles, but the rest of the owl you have to draw yourself. And the thing is, with autonomy, we're making fun of it in this industry. Lots of companies, they look really, this is at Zappos in the US, right? And you think this doesn't happen here? It does. I wouldn't want to work at a place like this. This is like sort of mandatory fun. I don't like mandatory fun. I'll show you another example. This is a meeting room in a highly respected retailer's office in the Netherlands. And this is my girlfriend's lag, basically. She's in here for a job interview for an important IT management role. And she's stuck up to her knees in her room with little balls. This is not IKEA, by the way. It's a glass room. And she walked into the room, she sat there for half an hour, she said, I'm not going to work here. This is not my thing. That doesn't mean it's bad. It's just, what's the point? This has nothing to do with autonomy, right? Or self-organization. This is just making mockery out of what we do, basically. This is not taking people serious. I don't like it. So the only thing I did discover about trying to move teams to autonomy is that fewer rules seems to work. So if there's less rules, what do people do? Right? They have to figure out stuff themselves. They have to start thinking, or continue to think. I'll show you a short movie clip. I took this clip in Indonesia. This is a big city in Sumatra called Medan. And I was in a taxi, right? I'm not driving here, by the way, so don't worry. So, and we have to cross the road there. And look at the traffic. There's all these signs, right? And everybody's directed into lines, and there's stop signs and whatever. There's nothing of that kind, right? There are no rules, basically. Even the traffic light, look, it's both red and green at the same time. I have no idea what that means. Still, we get across to the other side. And you know why? Why is it? Why didn't we just die here at this crossroads? It's because people communicate. They look at each other. They anticipate what the other's doing. If there's a huge BMW coming from the other side, you stop. It's probably a salesperson in a suit. Anyway, so this is it, right? You just have to start communicating with each other. Now look at what happens in the place I live in. This is over-regulated. We are, in the Netherlands, an over-regulated country, right? It is, there's so much signs and lines and traffic lights that what we do is we stop thinking, right? The more rules you have, the less you think. You're thinking like, why bother, right? Why would I even think? Other people are thinking for me. I'm just going to do this little piece of work, and then I'm good. You're not. You have to start thinking, right? Because software development is way too complex to not think. Software development is so hard that Edgar Dijkstra, he says, the programmer has to be able to think in terms of conceptual hierarchies that are much deeper than a single mind ever needed to face before. We are in the most complex industry there is. Still, we have the huge responsibility of actually making sure that hospitals don't break down. A hospital broke down a couple of weeks ago, and that's because they lifted the server. And then it broke down, and they switched to the secondary server. And at some point in time, some system administrator said, oh, we can switch on the first one again. And then everything broke down. The whole hospital went out of business for weeks, right? This is our responsibility. That means we have to think. And it is highly complex. It takes a lot of skills to be able to build software. That means if you leave it to like these enterprise agile frameworks, who have used in a safe information or agile transformation or whatever, right? Are you in there? Oh, you're good. You're not in there, right? So that's good. So the question is, what does it really mean to be agile? And what does it mean to scale agile? Should you be doing multiple versions of Scrum or large-scale Scrum or whatever? Do you really need an enterprise agile process to be able to do agile in larger companies? And my guess, it isn't, because I'll show you an example, right? And I'm going to do a little quiz with you. It's called Where's the Customer? I'm going to show you the picture of Safe. You know Safe, right? Okay, well, and you have to question yourself, where's the customer in this picture? So this is the approach. This is version 4. Version 5 is even worse, by the way. So to show you the customer is right there. It is in the picture, right? To my surprise, actually. It's the guy being hit by this release train. And he doesn't know what hits him. So the question is, does enterprise agile approaches, do they really make you faster and quicker and easier to respond and more agile? No, they don't. Like this one. This is from Discipline Agile. It has all these roles next to the team. Or people think, oh, you know what we'll do? We'll just copy Spotify. I bet there's people in the audience that actually work for a company that says, we are going to adopt the Spotify model. That's dumb. It's not because it's a bad model, it's a good model. But it was written by Spotify in 2014 as a snapshot of how they worked at that point in time. They don't work like this anymore. That's 6 years ago. They have changed, they have moved on. right? And that is exactly what you should be doing. You shouldn't get stuck in whether it's Scrum or whether it's Safe or whether it's even the Spotify model, which is really good. You should do your own thinking. That is why you're hired for. Basically, because you are not Spotify, unless you work for Spotify though, but that's different. And it's already said in the Agile Manifesto, right? The Agile Manifesto says, we are uncovering better ways of developing software. And the word uncovering is the key. This is what it's all about. We get better at what we do. That means you have all got to think for yourself what works best for you. Don't say, yes, we're doing Scrum, so we have to do these stand-ups every day. If you don't like the stand-ups, quit. Don't do that, right? Stop doing these stupid projects, because they don't work in this industry. I'm going to wrap it up, because I only have like 2 minutes, or less, 0 minutes, whatever. So I'm going to do a short retrospective. This is the only one I'll do this week, I guess. I hope. So basically, you have got to understand that we are not in a world that is very plannable. That means every situation, every organization, every team works in different situations. That means there is no approach that will save your life and that comes out of a 16-page booklet that you can do certification for 200 euros and then be certified for the rest of your life and have work for the rest of your life. It doesn't really work. You should go and basically build smaller features, much smaller than you think you do, in much shorter cycles, with much smaller teams, because communication is easier and you can work every way you want, right? That means all of this traditional stuff, waterfall-y stuff, should go. Also, we should move on from traditional Agile into even more Agile, into continuous work. And that basically results into a very, very simple way of working. Basically, the only thing I'm basically trying to teach the teams I work with this is solve a single small problem every day. That's all, right? And that makes life so really simple, because the only process you really, really need is this. This is the process you need as a team. You pick a small problem, you form a small team, you go out, do the work, you solve it, you report it as done, you go home, come back the next day, whenever you want to, or work anywhere you go, and repeat this process. This is Agile at its most. Everything else is ceremony. And that doesn't mean it's always good. And if you're thinking, well, I'm just a small raider in this big company, I cannot change this. There's only one way to go if you really want to change stuff, right? There's only one person who can ignite the change if you want to change. You know what a person is? It is you, right? You have to start the change. If you don't do it, nobody else will do it, right? And from there, you always continue to learn, because that's the only way we as individuals can keep up. Keep on learning what we do, right? Keep on improving on what we do. By the way, never forget to have fun. And, well, if that all doesn't work, we just remove the node modules and do an npm install, right? Last slide. Stop doing projects, please. They don't work in this industry. Keep thinking for yourself and never, ever, ever stop learning. Thank you for having me, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of